night in the abandoned house. The wind howled through the trees, their skeletal branches clawing at the night sky as if pleading for mercy. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow over the desolate landscape. It was a night that seemed to whisper secrets of the past, urging those who dared to listen to the forgotten corners of the world. It was on such a night that 4 friends, Emma, Jake, Lily, and Mark, found themselves standing before the dilapidated structure known as the Old Hawthorne House. The house had been abandoned for decades, its once grand facade now a crumbling testament to a bygone era. Local legend spoke of its dark history, tales of a family that vanished without a trace one stormy night in the 1950s. Some said the house was cursed, others claimed it was haunted. But for Emma and her friends, it was the ultimate test of courage. "Are we really doing this?" Lily asked, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. Her eyes were wide with a mix of fear and excitement. "Of course we are," Jake replied, flashing a confident grin. "We've come all this way. Besides, what's the worst that could happen?" Emma glanced at Mark, who shrugged nonchalantly. "I guess we're about to find out," he said, stepping forward. The front door creaked ominously as they pushed it open, the sound echoing through the empty halls. The air inside was thick with dust and the scent of decay. Cobwebs hung like ghostly drapes from the ceiling, and the floorboards groaned under their weight. As they ventured deeper into the house, the temperature seemed to drop, sending a chill down their spines. The moonlight filtered through broken windows, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. "Check this out," Jake called from the parlor, his voice tinged with awe. He pointed to a grand piano, its keys yellowed with age. "I bet this thing hasn't been played in years." Lily approached cautiously, her fingers brushing the keys. A discordant note rang out, startling them all. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said, stepping back. Ignoring her, Jake sat down and began to play a haunting melody. The music filled the room, echoing off the walls and reverberating through the house. It was a sad, mournful tune, as if the house itself was lamenting its lost inhabitants. Suddenly, a loud crash came from upstairs, shattering the music's spell. They all froze, hearts pounding in their chests. "What was that?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Mark shook his head. "I don't know, but we should check it out." With trepidation, they made their way to the staircase, the wood creaking under their feet. The upper floor was shrouded in darkness, the only light coming from the moon's faint glow through the windows. As they reached the top, a cold draft swept through the hallway, carrying with it a faint whisper. "Leave," it seemed to say, the word barely more than a breath. "Did you hear that?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with fear. Emma nodded, her heart racing. "We should go back." But before they could move, a door at the end of the hall swung open with a creak. A soft, flickering light spilled into the corridor, beckoning them closer. Against their better judgment, they approached the door, peering inside. The room was dimly lit by a single candle, its flame flickering erratically. In the center of the room stood an old rocking chair, its wooden frame worn and splintered. As they watched, the chair began to rock back and forth, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. The air grew colder, and the whispers returned, louder this time, filling the room with a cacophony of pleading voices. "Leave, leave, leave." Emma felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see Mark, his face pale. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice urgent. But as they turned to leave, the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. The whispers intensified, swirling around them like a tempest. "Help us! Help us!" Panic set in as they frantically searched for a way out. The walls seemed to close in, the room growing smaller with each passing second. The candle's flame flickered wildly, casting grotesque shadows that twisted and writhed along the walls. Emma's mind raced, trying to make sense of the chaos. "We need to stay calm," she said, though her voice betrayed her fear. "There has to be a way out." Jake, who who had been silent since the music stopped, suddenly spoke up. "The window," he said, pointing to the far wall. "We can climb out." With renewed determination, they rushed to the window, pushing it open. The cold night air hit them like a wave, a welcome relief from the oppressive atmosphere of the room. One by one, they climbed out, dropping to the ground below. As they landed, the whispers faded, replaced by the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. Breathless and shaken, they stood in the yard, staring up at the house. The candle's light still flickered in the window, a ghostly beacon in the darkness. "What just happened?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. Mark shook his head. "I don't know, but I think we should leave." As they made their way back to the car, the house loomed behind them, a silent sentinel watching their retreat. The night seemed to close in around them, the darkness pressing in on all sides. Once inside the car, they sat in silence, the events of the night replaying in their minds. The house had been more than just an abandoned building. It was a place of sorrow and despair, a prison for the souls trapped within. As they drove away, Emma glanced back at the house, a sense of unease settling over her. She knew they had been lucky to escape, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't seen the last of the old Hawthorne house. The night stretched on, the moon casting its pale light over the landscape. The friends were left with more questions than answers, the mystery of the house lingering in their thoughts. In the days that followed, they tried to forget the night in the abandoned house, but the experience had left its mark. They had glimpsed a world beyond their own, a realm of shadows and whispers that defied explanation. And though they would never return to the old Hawthorne house, they knew that its secrets would haunt them forever, a chilling reminder of the night they dared to venture into the unknown. The mysterious neighbor. In the quiet suburban neighborhood of Maplewood, where the streets were lined with manicured lawns and the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, there lived a man known only as Mr. Blackwood. He was a mystery to everyone, a shadowy figure who kept to himself, rarely seen except for the occasional glimpse through the curtains of his old Victorian house at the end of the street. The house itself was a relic, standing out amidst the modern homes that surrounded it. Its windows were dark, the paint peeling, and the garden overgrown with weeds. Despite its neglected state, there was something about the house that drew the attention of those who passed by, a sense of foreboding that lingered in the air. Emma, a curious young woman who had recently moved into the neighborhood, found herself intrigued by Mr. Blackwood. She had heard the rumors, of course, whispers of strange noises coming from the house at night, of flickering lights in the windows long after midnight. But she was not one to believe in idle gossip, and her curiosity often got the better of her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the street lamps flickered to life, Emma decided to take a walk. She found herself drawn to Mr. Blackwood's house, her steps slowing as she approached. The air seemed to grow colder, and a shiver ran down her spine. As she stood there, contemplating whether to knock on the door, she noticed a flicker of movement in one of the upstairs windows. A shadow passed by, fleeting and indistinct, but enough to pique her interest. Before she could change her mind, Emma stepped onto the porch and rang the doorbell. The sound echoed through the house, a hollow, lonely chime. She waited, her heart pounding in her chest, but there was no answer. She was about to turn away when she heard a soft creak, and the door swung open a crack. A sliver of dim light spilled out, and a voice, deep and resonant, spoke from the shadows. "Can I help you?" Emma hesitated, suddenly unsure of herself. I live down the street," she stammered. "I just wanted to introduce myself." There was a pause, and then the door opened wider, revealing a tall, gaunt man with piercing blue eyes. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his dark hair was streaked with silver. He regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, extending a hand. "Welcome to my home." Emma shook his hand, surprised by the warmth of his grip. "Emma," she replied, "it's nice to meet you." Mr. Blackwood stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. "Please come in." The inside of the house was as enigmatic as its owner. The walls were lined with bookshelves, filled with volumes of all shapes and sizes. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the room. Despite the inviting atmosphere, there was an air of mystery that hung over the place, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Emma sat on a plush armchair, her eyes scanning the room. "You have a lot of books," she commented, trying to break the silence. Mr. Blackwood nodded, settling into a chair opposite her. "I find them to be a window to other worlds," he said, his voice tinged with a hint of melancholy. They talked for a while, their conversation ranging from literature to the history of the neighborhood. Emma found herself drawn to Mr. Blackwood's intelligence and charm, but there was something about him that eluded her, a secret he seemed to be guarding closely. As the evening wore on, the conversation turned to the rumors that surrounded him. "People say strange things about you," Emma said, her curiosity getting the better of her. Mr. Blackwood chuckled softly. "I'm aware," he replied, "but people often fear what they don't understand." Emma leaned forward, her eyes meeting his. "And what is it that they don't understand?" He paused, considering her question. "Let's just say that I have a certain affinity for the unusual," he said finally. "I suppose you could call me a collector of sorts?" Emma's mind raced, trying to decipher his meaning. "A collector of what?" she asked. Mr. Blackwood smiled, a mysterious glint in his eye. "Of stories," he said, "of secrets, of things that defy explanation." The room seemed to grow colder, and Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She realized that she had stumbled upon something far greater than she had anticipated, a world that existed just beyond the veil of the ordinary. As she left the house, the night air wrapping around her like a shroud, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she had been marked by her encounter with Mr. Blackwood. The mystery of her neighbor lingered in her thoughts, a tantalizing puzzle that beckoned her to return. In the days that followed, she found herself drawn back to the old Victorian house, each visit revealing new layers to the enigma that was Mr. Blackwood. She learned of his travels to distant lands, of the strange and wondrous things he had seen, and of the secrets he had uncovered. But with each revelation came new questions, and Emma realized that the mystery of her neighbor was one that would never be fully unraveled. It was a puzzle that defied logic, a tapestry woven with threads of light and shadow. And though she would never truly understand the enigmatic Mr. Blackwood, she knew that their paths were now intertwined, bound by the secrets they shared and the stories they had yet to tell. The mysterious voice in the forest. The small town of Eldergrove was nestled at the edge of an ancient forest, a sprawling expanse of towering trees and dense undergrowth that seemed to stretch on forever. The townsfolk often spoke of the forest in hushed tones, sharing tales of its mysteries and the strange occurrences that happened within its depths. But for most, it was simply a part of the landscape, a place to be admired from a distance. For 16-year-old Alex, however, the forest was a place of wonder and adventure. He had always felt a connection to the woods, a pull that drew him in whenever he had the chance to explore. His friends often teased him about his fascination, calling him the forest boy, but Alex didn't mind. He loved the solitude and the sense of freedom that the forest provided. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the leaves crunched underfoot and the air was filled with the scent of pine, Alex set out on one of his regular excursions. He had no particular destination in mind, simply content to wander and let his thoughts drift. As he ventured deeper into the forest, the world around him seemed to fall away, leaving only the rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. The sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor. Alex had been walking for some time when he first heard it, a faint, melodic voice, barely more than a whisper, carried on the breeze. He paused, listening intently, trying to discern where it was coming from. "Hello," he called out, his voice echoing through the trees. The voice continued, a soft, haunting melody that seemed to wrap around him like a gentle embrace. It was unlike anything he had ever heard, a sound that resonated with something deep within him. Curiosity piqued. Alex followed the sound, his steps quickening as he moved through the forest. The voice grew louder, more distinct, guiding him like a beacon through the trees. As he approached a small clearing, the source of the voice came into view. There, perched on a low branch, was a small, delicate bird with iridescent feathers that shimmered in the sunlight. Its song was mesmerizing, a cascade of notes that seemed to dance through the air. Alex watched, entranced, as the bird sang its haunting melody. He had never seen anything like it before, and he felt a sense of awe at the beauty of the creature and its song. But as he stood there, he noticed something strange. The bird's song seemed to change, the melody shifting into words that he could almost understand. It was as if the bird was trying to communicate, its voice weaving a tapestry of sound that spoke of secrets and forgotten tales. "Listen," the voice seemed to say, the word barely more than a breath. "Hear the stories of the forest." Alex felt a shiver run down his spine, a mix of fear and excitement. He realized that he was witnessing something extraordinary, a moment that defied explanation. The bird's song continued, weaving a narrative of the forest's history, of the creatures that lived within its depths, and of the ancient forces that shaped the land. It spoke of a time when the forest was young, when the world was filled with magic and wonder. As the song reached its crescendo, Alex felt a connection to the forest that he had never experienced before. He understood, in a way that words could not convey, the beauty and the mystery of the world around him. The bird's song faded, leaving only the rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. The forest seemed to come alive, the air humming with energy and life. Alex stood there for a long time, savoring the moment and the sense of peace that had settled over him. He knew that he had been given a rare gift, a glimpse into a world that existed just beyond the veil of the ordinary. As he made his way back home, the sun dipping below the horizon and casting a golden glow over the landscape, Alex felt a renewed sense of wonder. The forest was no longer just a place of adventure. It was a living, breathing entity, filled with secrets and stories waiting to be discovered. In the days that followed, Alex returned to the forest, hoping to hear the bird's song again. Though he never encountered the mysterious bird again, he found that the forest had become a part of him, its mysteries and wonders woven into the fabric of his being. The experience had changed him, opening his eyes to the beauty and the magic of the world. And though he would never fully understand the mystery of the voice in the forest, he knew that it would stay with him forever. A reminder of the day he discovered the true heart of the woods. The mysterious guest. The old inn stood at the edge of the small village of Ravenswood, its weathered stone walls and thatched roof blending seamlessly with the misty landscape. It was a place where travelers often stopped for the night, seeking refuge from the cold winds that swept across the moorlands. But for the villagers, the inn was more than just a resting place. It was a hub of stories and secrets, a place where the mundane met the mysterious. On a particularly stormy evening, as rain lashed against the windows and thunder rumbled in the distance, the inn was bustling with activity. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the room, and the air was filled with the scent of stew and freshly baked bread. Among the guests was a man who stood out from the rest. He was tall and slender, with sharp features and piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through you. He wore a long, dark coat and carried a leather-bound book under his arm. The villagers had taken to calling him the mysterious guest, and whispers of his presence had spread through the inn like wildfire. Emma, the innkeeper's daughter, watched him from behind the bar, her curiosity piqued. She had always been drawn to the unusual, and there was something about the man that intrigued her. As the evening wore on, she found herself glancing his way, hoping for a chance to speak with him. Finally, as the storm showed no signs of abating, the mysterious guest approached the bar. "A room for the night, if you please," he said, his voice smooth and cultured. Emma nodded, taking a key from the rack behind her. "Of course, sir. Room 3 is ready for you." As she handed him the key, their eyes met, and Emma felt a strange sensation, as if she were being drawn into his gaze. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man smiled, a knowing glint in his eye. "Perhaps a moment of your time," he replied. "I find myself in need of some company." Emma hesitated, but her curiosity got the better of her. "All right," she said, leading him to a quiet corner of the room. They sat by the fire, the warmth of the flames chasing away the chill of the storm. The mysterious guest placed his book on the table, and Emma couldn't help but notice the intricate designs that adorned its cover. "That's a beautiful book," she commented, her eyes tracing the patterns. The man nodded, running a hand over the cover. "It's a collection of stories," he said, "tales of the strange and the unusual." Emma's interest was piqued. "What kind of stories?" she asked. The mysterious guest leaned forward, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "Stories of places where the veil between worlds is thin, where the ordinary meets the extraordinary." Emma felt a shiver run down her spine, a mix of fear and excitement. "Have you seen such places?" she asked. The man smiled, a mysterious glint in his eye. "I have traveled far and wide," he replied, "and I have seen things that defy explanation." He opened the book, revealing pages filled with elegant script and vivid illustrations. As he turned the pages, he began to tell her stories of distant lands and forgotten times, of creatures that defied the laws of nature and phenomena that challenged the boundaries of reality. Emma listened, entranced, as the mysterious guest wove his tales. Each story was more fascinating than the last, filled with wonder and mystery. She felt as if she were being transported to another world, a place where anything was possible. As the evening wore on, the storm began to subside, and the inn grew quieter. The other guests had retired to their rooms, leaving Emma and the mysterious guest alone by the fire. "Tell me," Emma said, her voice filled with awe, "how do you find these places?" The man closed the book, his expression thoughtful. "Sometimes," he said, "they find you." He paused, considering his next words. "But there is always a price to pay," he added. "A cost for glimpsing the extraordinary." Emma felt a sense of unease, the warmth of the fire doing little to chase away the chill that had settled over her. "What kind of cost?" she asked. The mysterious guest smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "The cost of knowledge," he replied. "The burden of understanding." He stood up, taking his book with him. "Thank you for the company," he said, his voice gentle. "And remember, not everything is as it seems." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts. The inn was silent, the only sound the soft crackling of the fire. As she sat there, Emma realized that she had been given a glimpse into a world that existed just beyond the ordinary, a world filled with mystery and wonder. And though she knew that she might never see the mysterious guest again, she knew that his stories would stay with her forever, a reminder of the night she encountered the extraordinary. The Haunting of Blackwood Manor. In the heart of the English countryside, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, stood the imposing structure of Blackwood Manor. Once a grand estate, it had fallen into disrepair over the years, its windows shattered and its walls covered in ivy. The locals whispered about the manor, tales of its dark past and the spirits that were said to roam its halls. Despite the rumors, or perhaps because of them, the manor held a certain allure for those drawn to the macabre. One such person was Sarah, a young journalist with a penchant for the supernatural. She had heard the stories of Blackwood Manor and was determined to uncover the truth behind the legends. Armed with her camera, a notebook, and a sense of adventure, she set out to spend a night in the manor, hoping to capture evidence of the paranormal. As she approached the manor, the air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding settled over her. The wind howled through the trees, and the sky was a foreboding shade of gray. Despite the ominous atmosphere, Sarah pressed on, her determination outweighing her fear. The front door creaked open with a reluctant groan, revealing a grand foyer that had seen better days. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light that filtered through the broken windows, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. Sarah set up her equipment in the foyer, placing cameras and audio recorders strategically around the room. She had read about the various phenomena reported in the manor: whispering voices, shadowy figures, and sudden drops in temperature, and she was prepared to document anything that might occur. As night fell, the manor was engulfed in darkness, the only light coming from the dim glow of her equipment. Sarah settled into a corner, her heart pounding in her chest. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the old house settling. Hours passed and nothing happened. Sarah began to doubt her decision, wondering if the stories were nothing more than the product of overactive imaginations. But just as she was about to give up, a chill swept through the room, and the temperature plummeted. Her breath fogged in the air as she checked her equipment, her fingers numb with cold. The audio recorder crackled to life, and a soft, indistinct whisper filled the room. Sarah's heart raced as she strained to make out the words. "Help us," the voice seemed to say, the plea barely more than a breath. Sarah's mind raced, her thoughts a jumble of fear and excitement. She had come here hoping for a paranormal encounter, but now that she was faced with the reality of it, she felt a surge of panic. The whispers continued, growing louder and more insistent. "Help us," they pleaded, the voices echoing through the empty halls. Determined to uncover the source of the voices, Sarah followed the sound, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She moved through the manor, the darkness pressing in around her, until she reached the base of the grand staircase. The whispers were louder here, a cacophony of pleading voices that seemed to come from all around her. As she stood there, a shadowy figure appeared at the top of the stairs, its form indistinct and shifting. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she watched the figure, her heart pounding in her chest. The air grew colder, and the whispers intensified, filling the air with a cacophony of despair. "Who are you?" she called out, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, but the whispers changed, forming a single, coherent sentence. "Join us," they whispered, the words sending a chill down her spine. Sarah backed away, her mind reeling. She had come here seeking answers, but now she was faced with a reality that was far more terrifying than she had anticipated. As she turned to leave, the front door slammed shut, trapping her inside. The whispers grew louder, the voices swirling around her like a tempest. "Join us, join us." Panic set in as Sarah frantically searched for a way out. The manor seemed to close in around her, the darkness pressing in on all sides. She could feel the presence of the spirits, their despair and anger palpable in the air. In a moment of clarity, she remembered the audio recorder in her hand. She pressed the playback button, hoping to capture the voices as evidence. The recorder crackled to life, and the whispers filled the room, a haunting testament to the terror she was experiencing. Desperate, Sarah ran to the window, her only thought to escape. She smashed the glass with her elbow, the sharp pain barely registering as she climbed through the broken window. The cold night air hit her like a wave, a welcome relief from the oppressive atmosphere of the manor. She stumbled away, her mind racing, until she reached the safety of her car. As she sat there, trying to calm her racing heart, Sarah realized that she had gotten more than she had bargained for. The experience had left her shaken, the terror of the night etched into her memory. In the days that followed, she listened to the audio recording, the whispers sending shivers down her spine. She had captured evidence of the paranormal, but the experience had taught her that some mysteries were best left unsolved. The haunting of Blackwood Manor was a reminder of the thin veil that separated the living from the dead, a chilling testament to the power of the supernatural. And though she would never return to the manor, Sarah knew that the experience would stay with her forever, a haunting reminder of the night she faced the unknown.
Thanks for listening, guys. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more chilling tales. Your support means a lot, Stay tuned for more mysteries and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.